Hello and welcome to Experience Your Potential. My name is Stephanie McKidd. I'm a fitness expert and entrepreneur with a passion for self-improvement. I'm certainly not the only person out there who has overcome struggles. So on a weekly basis, I'm going to be interviewing miraculous women who have dug out of devastation and grown into successful, powerful, and most importantly, very giving people. I will search high and low for guests with amazing stories that will prove to us that no matter how dire our situation is right now, with a great plan, positive mindset, and perseverance, our future is bright. If you hear any stories that strike a chord with you, I would really appreciate if you would share with your friends and family, and of course, give me any feedback along the way. I'm extremely excited to finally be committed to my passion project, so let's get started. Hello everybody and welcome to episode 1 of Experience Your Potential. Seriously, you guys, I've been thinking of starting this podcast forever, and there's always something holding me back or something getting in the way, or believe it or not, just like most of you, more stresses that I have to deal with before I can do stuff, to help other people, right? So things are going good in life right now. I've gotten through some big struggles lately, and now it is my time to start sharing and following all the plans that I had set out for myself. Obviously, I'm going to be interviewing lots of different guests over the weeks, but I thought that for the first podcast, I would sort of go through my life story. There is lots to it. Lots of stuff has happened to me to get me to the place that I am now. But I'm just going to go into a little bit of detail, not too much. And obviously over the weeks as I'm talking to other people, you'll probably hear a lot more details of my story. So the reason I'm doing this is, have you ever noticed that when you're going through a big struggle and you just finally cave and you have to talk to somebody, whether it's a friend or family or your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever it may be, and you start opening up about what's going on, and throughout the conversation, you find out they're having pretty much the exact same struggles and you had no idea they were struggling with it. And I think the problem is that we keep everything inside and we want to try and deal with everything on our own, and we don't want to look like we're failing or struggling to people that are around us. But as soon as you open up and you hear that your problems are normal and you're not alone, and there are ways that you can dig out of whatever situation you're in right now, I thought it would be awesome to be able to interview people that have struggled maybe even a little bit more than the average person, but now they're really succeeding in whatever they put their mind to. And I feel like for listeners, maybe people that don't want to open up themselves, hearing these other stories from other people might just give them a little bit of hope. And if that's you, I really hope that this is helpful to you and that you realize that perseverance and planning and belief in yourself, you can do whatever you want to do. So anyway, I guess now would be a good time to pop into my story. So I was born in 1981 and in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And growing up, I had an amazing life. My dad worked his butt off. My mom stayed home with us. She was always home when I got home from school. My dad would save all year to take us on a trip every Christmas. So we saw the world every summer. We were at the lake. Tons and tons of amazing memories. And I was very athletic. I pretty much did every sport I could think of. And I definitely excelled at every sport I tried. Like, I was in gymnastics and I was provincial champion, and I started skating when I was like 3, and always basically playing with kids that were older than me. And then I started playing basketball after gymnastics, and we were always provincial champions. I don't think we even lost a game for like all of junior high. I was receiving recruitment letters from universities by the time I was in grade 9. So really, I can't complain at all about my childhood. Really, it was very, very good. However, my father was an alcoholic, and it did create a lot of tension and uncertainty in our family. When I was in elementary school, I was already going to Al-Anon, which is a support group for kids and wives or husbands or whatever it may be that is living with someone that is an alcoholic. So we were taking the steps to deal with what was going on. However, we knew there was a problem and he didn't. So we were getting help, he wasn't. So you almost felt like you were trapped in the situation that you had no control over. So skip forward to high school, and I started hanging out at the YMCA a lot and playing basketball with a lot of people that were much older than me and practicing. I was there all the time, pretty much just to avoid home, really. And I met some people that, I don't know, at the time, inappropriate. They're way, way older than me, but, there's an attraction there. And I always thought, because I had older brothers, I was just kind of liked to be around people that were more mature. But looking back now that I'm older and thinking of the age that they were, it was probably just an inappropriate situation. Anyways, I probably can tell that you know where this is going, but one of those people did end up sexually abusing me, putting me in a pretty horrible position. And I didn't even know that it was sexual assault until recently. I was talking to a psychologist for something completely unrelated. And as we started digging, those times came up in conversation. And it really explained a lot about how I've lived my life since that time. So after that happened, not only did I have no control over what my dad was doing, but I also didn't have any control in that situation. So I ended up being anorexic. And if you study that disease at all, it's pretty well known that the majority of people that turn to this disease is because they don't have control and they need something that they can have control over and feel like they're safe. So I started basically going on a very severe diet. I was also a compulsive exerciser, so I would not only not eat very much food throughout the day, but I would also run fast for hours on end. And I very quickly went from, I think my highest was at that time was 121 pounds, and within no time, snap your fingers, blink your eyes, I think my lowest was 76 pounds. So I was obviously admitted to the hospital. Long story short, I got better. I left the hospital sooner than my psychologist wanted me to. They swore that I would be back there, but I'm pretty stubborn. So I left against medical advice, and I've never been back since. However, you don't just get over anorexia. You always kind of have those tendencies in your head. You just learn how to control them. And that's probably something that I can do a whole other podcast on at another time. So then anyways, fast forward a little bit more. I met my first husband. We left Winnipeg. We moved to Calgary for his job. Had an amazing life. I got into my career flying, and I really wanted to get married. And we were together, I don't know, I think it was 8 years before basically I forced him to get married. And we got married, and 6 months later I found out he got someone else pregnant. So obviously devastating, and I had no idea, and I had just felt like I was 28 years old at the time, and I knew I couldn't stay because there's a constant, it's not like he just cheated, but there's a constant reminder. There's a kid in the picture that would never let me really move on from what happened. And to this day, I never got an apology. I never got a reason why it happened. I didn't get a reason why it started. And that's really tough not to know those details, even though they hurt. It's really hard to move on when you don't know what you did wrong. And yeah, I know I didn't do anything wrong. It was him, blah, blah, blah. But, I'm sure you can relate in some way. I was always super happy in our relationship, but at that time, obviously, I decided to leave. And then I went, obviously, I was single for a little while. I went online to meet somebody because I was thinking, oh my God, I'm 28 years old and single, starting over. Like looking back, it's like I was only 28 years old. You have tons of time. But that's what I was feeling at the time. So I went online to date. And what I was looking for is the exact opposite of what I had. So we had a great relationship, but it wasn't like really, really mushy. And it was clear to me that I loved him more than he loved me. And so what I was looking for is someone opposite, like someone that there was no doubt in my mind that they were in love with me. And so I found that, but it really, really backfired on me. So marriage number 2, I was dating him and he was always very jealous and always accusing me of doing things that I wasn't, all that kind of stuff. And I saw that at the time as he was passionate about me. He really loved me. I thought it was cute that he was jealous. I love that he was jealous because it just showed that he was more focused on me than it was like him trying to find some other chick. So I thought that was perfect for me. Fast forward 6 years or 5 years when we ended up separating, I found out that that was a very, very unhealthy jealousy, and it was controlling, and I was very, very unhappy. Throughout that time, I did get pregnant with our daughter. I did want a daughter, so we tried very, very hard. There was all sorts of infertility involved in that, lots of testing. It took me a long time to get pregnant. And she came into the world, and of course, I ended up with postpartum depression, which of course leads to lots of stuff. You're not wanting to be sexually active, you're very depressed, you're out of energy, you don't want to go out, you don't want to see anybody. And that really amplified the jealousy and stuff that was going on with my husband at the time. Because obviously, you don't want sex at home. He's thinking I'm getting it from somewhere else. Meanwhile, all I want is help. I really needed help to get through what I was going through. And I don't think anyone that hasn't been depressed can really understand how bad it is. But that was the last thing I needed, was getting accusations and being controlled at that time in my life. So fast forward through all the details of that. Obviously, he's my ex-husband, so I did leave. The divorce wasn't really as easy as the first one because there was my house involved and obviously a child. And throughout those years, I had helped him realize his dreams, starting a business and buying a semi-truck, and really transformed his life. And the lack of appreciation for what I did going through the divorce was completely mind-boggling to me. And it really makes me realize that I'm a very selfless person. I do try and help, like no matter how much it costs me or how much time it takes, I'm always trying to help people. And when it's not appreciated, it just like throws me for an entire loop. So of course, that's what I'm talking about a lot in counseling, because I don't want to stop doing things like that. They really make me feel good about myself and feel good about my contribution to the world and the people around me. But everything that went on in the divorce really put a sour taste in my mouth. So that basically brings me to today. Very excited. Last week, the divorce papers were finally signed. Got royally screwed, but it's over. And it's really awesome, actually, that the only thing we didn't fight about was Haley. Haley's our daughter. She's amazing. It's the best thing that came out of that relationship. She just brightens my day. And I'm just glad we didn't have to fight over that. We both know that we're good parents. We both know what's best for Haley, and that's to have both of us in her life. And hopefully we won't be having any more fights and having her feel the tension. We always tried to protect her from seeing any fights or hearing any fights, but she's smart and she could definitely tell when I'm stressed out, and probably vice versa, which kind of brings me to a sidebar. This whole divorce, like, I left in October of 2016, and now it's April of 2018, and we just signed the divorce papers the other day. But the driving force that made me leave was back in October of 2016 was Haley flat out asking me, as basically a 3-year-old, "Mommy, why are you always crying?" It really broke my heart, and it brought back a lot of memories from my childhood, and it was definitely not something that I wanted Haley to have to live throughout her childhood. So that was my driving force to leave, and I think all three of us are better off and happier now than we were back then. I know I am anyway. So stepping back a little bit, the year that I had Haley, of course, you just had a baby, so you're carrying a little bit more weight. And as a former anorexic, that was not okay with me. I have a very healthy pregnancy, and I ate properly, and I had been for several years. But I think it triggered a little bit in me because obviously I was now the heaviest I've ever been. So I've always been interested in fitness competitions. I watched them all the time on TV as a teenager. And so that was the year that I got into competing. And basically my first competition was 8 months after I had Haley. And I actually got second place, which pretty much hooked me from the very beginning. So it was, I like control, and I'm very good at dieting, and I got to be on stage and be someone that I'm totally not, because I am not high maintenance. Jeans is dressing up for me. And it was just such a amazing, exhilarating time in my life. Not only am I, raising a new baby, but able to focus on so many other things. And I just felt so accomplished in the whole process. So throughout that time, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I really wanted 1 hour to myself. So I'd always wake up a little bit early, or you could say late if I'd already been up with her, but to basically just surf the net and be quiet and have a cup of coffee. And that evolved into me starting my fitness Facebook page. So I was basically just preparing for my competition and documenting my progress. And it led to quite a big following and a lot of great friends that I met through social media. And that was when my business was born, which is totally unplanned, but it's something I was passionate about. It's something that I was just doing automatically. People would ask me questions and I would answer them. Before this, I was so always interested in fitness that I had already taken my CanFit Pro. I'd already had my personal training certificate, and all of that was not to start a career. That was all just because I was really interested in it. So I'd already taken courses on nutrition and fitness and workout preparation and how to build programs, all that sort of stuff. So people were naturally asking me questions as I was prepping for this competition, and I was naturally giving them answers because that's what I love to do. So I stayed home with Haley for about 3 years before I went back to work. My first job back was working at Orange Theory as a coach. And then I quickly became interested in getting back into aviation. So before Haley, I was a pilot. And way before that, I was a flight attendant. And I've always been really drawn to the aviation industry for some reason. And it's not necessarily the planes. I think it's more the schedule. It's kind of all over the place, but you also get a lot of time off to reward you for being all over the place. So I ended up getting a job and going back into aviation, but all the while I've had my side business it's called Operation Lean, if you don't follow me already. And I do online training. So I make programs and nutrition programs and all that for my clients. And then they check in with me weekly. And basically, I'm helping them reach their goals. So that's where I am in my career right now. But we can rewind or fast forward, whatever you want to see it as, with my love life that came with all of its own struggles that you'll probably hear more about as time goes on. But I actually had my eye on him when I was a coach at Orange Theory. Of course, I wasn't yet divorced, so didn't kind of follow up on that. But once I did leave, of course, I'm not a cheater, but once I did leave, I seeked him out and asked him out, and the rest is kind of history. So we've been together ever since then, even though he failed every one of my skill testing questions on our first date. But anyways, this relationship has come with all sorts of struggles as well. When we met, he was a single guy and had no interest in having kids. And of course, here I am. We have a great time together, but I have a 4-year-old. So we knew basically from the very beginning that it was going to be tough and that we both have to make a lot of changes. You know, I was pretty lax with Haley, and meanwhile, he's a neat nut. So between the two of us, we had to shift quite a bit. I had to be a little bit more stern with Haley, make her clean up her stuff, where, you know, in my house, I just don't really care how neat everything looks. I make her pick up her stuff, but if her bed isn't made perfect, I don't really care. And then he had to learn how to deal with a little bit of mess. You know, you have a 5-year-old now living in the house. There's going to be crumbs. There's going to be, you know, a little bit of disaster behind them wherever they go. I think in the long run, we're both even happier and stronger as a couple because we both did have to make those compromises, and we made it through, and we just bought a house, and, you know, things are really exciting. So basically, I'm happy in love, and I'm got through my divorce, and I have a stable job, and I have all my stuff going on the side, and I actually finally feel in control of my life, which brings me to this podcast. I've wanted to get women talking about their struggles for so long, and now that I've gotten through all my current struggles, I just feel like the time is now. So there you have it. That's my story. In a nutshell, I've left tons of stuff out, but that will come up over time, I'm sure. I've already got many, many ladies lined up for future podcasts. I'm being pretty picky in my selections, so they have to have a pretty good backstory, but can't just be, you know, living happy right now. They have to be doing something pretty incredible that will really motivate you, that you can go from bottom to top. So let me ask you, when I described that woman, was there anyone that came to mind for you? Is there anyone in your life that has overcome something crazy and really turned their life around and are either super successful or super driven or helping the world become a better place and really going above and beyond? If this is you or somebody that you know, please reach out to me and let me know if you're interested in doing an interview with me. I would love to hear your story and kind of dig deep on how we can share it with the rest of the world and help people out who may be having those same struggles. Or on the other side of the spectrum, if you hear one of my interviews and you can think of someone who's dealing with those same issues, I would love it if you would share this podcast with your friends and family. Obviously, as guests, I'm focused on women, but that doesn't mean that this can't be helpful for your significant other or a parent or a grandmother or anyone who might be having a loved one that is dealing with some issues in their life. So that's my story and that's my plan. I hope you join me next week for our very first guest, and thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.